Arguably the most well-known card in all of Flesh and Blood is one of the most powerful equipment pieces, Fyendal's Spring Tunic. Releasing with the very first set of the game, Welcome to Wraith, this iconic chess piece has been the point of contention for many players as it commands a high price tag. Showing up in 38.3% of decks on FabDB and ranked number 2 in popularity on Techlo Labs, this card is no doubt a core staple of the game. But why? What makes this Zelda-esque dress so popular? Why does everyone play Fyendal's Spring Tunic? There are many equipment options in Flesh and Blood, and while rarity doesn't always determine power level, it's usually true that the legendary pieces have the most powerful effects. From extra value to bending the core rules or just blocking for an absurd amount of damage, most of these rare pieces serve as best in slot. And this of course extends to the ubiquitous Spring Tunic. This chest piece only blocks for 1 and has blade break, meaning that once you block with it, it's gone forever. And while this is nice to have as it can save you in the late game, the real reason people run it is for that ability. At the start of each of your turns, you get to put an energy counter on it until it reaches 3. Once it's there, you can remove those counters to gain 1 resource at instant speed. Now, this may look unassuming at first. 1 resource every 3 turns may seem pretty slow, and in Blitz, it is. But in Classic Constructed, where some games can go to 12 plus turns, it's an absolute powerhouse. In a deck like Phi, that Tunic resource can be used to play an Art of War without pitching. This lets the Phi player keep an extra card in hand and pile on even more damage, making Tunic turns the best turns for Phi to go off.
That's quite big. Impressive.
In any deck running Command and Conquer and Pummels, the Tunic allows a player to pitch a blue, swing with the CNC, and then just smugly grin at you while you wonder if they have the pummel or not. That's a joke, by the way. They always have the frickin' pummel. Even warrior decks who have the courage of Bladehold will run Tunic in the sideboard alongside Steelblade Shunts. And in a similar vein to Shunt, there's Oasis Respite that can be used by every hero. Take that, stinky Kano players. But just remember, stopping an Aether Wildfire with an Oasis Respite might take a Tunic resource, but subscribing is absolutely free. And even setting aside the more specific uses, sometimes you just find yourself with an awkward hand being 1 resource short of being able to make the play that you want. Although this is all only if you remember to put the counter on the Tunic. See, there is a slight drawback to this card, and it has to do with your memory. You have to tick the Tunic up at the beginning of your turn. If you play a single card, you've missed the trigger.
Sir, why did you wait until the last minute to
trigger your Tunic?
Because I'm an idiot.
But even with that drawback, this card is still a fantastic option for many heroes. Free resources are often what allow for explosive turns. There is no doubt that Fyendal's Spring Tunic has had an incredible impact on Flesh and Blood. And while it might not be the easiest card to acquire,
That's no good.
Once a player does have one, it opens up the floodgates for deck building as it can be used by every single hero. But one thing that likely will diminish its value as time goes on is simply getting more good chest pieces for specific classes and talents. For example, Dromai has no use for Fyendal's Spring Tunic because Flamescale Furnace is such an integral card to that deck's strategy. However, despite the fact that an expanding card pool will likely make Fyendal's Spring Tunic weaker in the future, I still expect it to see play because quite frankly, free resources is just such a powerful ability. But whatever the future holds for Flesh and Blood and Fyendal's Spring Tunic, there is no doubt that this card will go down as one of the game's most iconic pieces of all time. If you liked this video and want to help support me, consider either becoming a channel member or checking out my Patreon. There are different levels of bonuses like early access to videos, signed cards, and even custom hero cards. And to those who are already supporting me, you have my deepest and most honest appreciation. It's because of all of you that I can continue to put in the work to bring the best content I possibly can to the Chadliest community in the TCG space. Thank you, my friends.